Welcome to the Coaching Index podcast. Honest conversations between coaches, practical insights, knowledge, ideas, impact.
What's your journey from playing to coaching now, and what does that look like for Kevin Smith?
It's been a journey. I grew up playing multiple sports, and soccer is probably number one, but basketball was as close to it as possible. I ran track in high school. I played in the golf team in high school. I played baseball growing up through probably middle school, sixth, maybe seventh grade. Then I had a bad experience on an all-star team going for like the Little League World Series kind of things. And it wasn't directed at me. I just watched somebody else have a bad experience. And I said, I'm not doing this. If that's the way this level is, I have no interest. And I left it. That was the last time I played organized baseball. I played just about everything. I thought I was going to be a basketball coach. That was actually my plan. God had different ideas for me, and I actually started as a basketball coach. And then when I moved up to Massachusetts, I was a basketball assistant, but I could never get a head job. And then a head soccer job opened up, and I was the assistant at the school. Got the job and haven't looked back since. And that's kind of been my focus. So, played semi-pro for 4 years after college. Then when we moved to Massachusetts, couldn't do it anymore. Kids took that time away and just trying to figure out how to navigate a new state.
So looking at your past background, like you said, you've coached high school, and now you're in the college setting. How did you get into the college setting? I'm really intrigued by that because my pathway, you said with kids already and family, I came out of college, and when I went into coaching, the first thing I wanted to do was get into college. But then family and stuff, I wouldn't say sidetrack that because that's not the right word, but it put a hold on stuff, and then it changed my direction. How did you get integrated into more the college, but the high school stuff as well?
I always wanted to, again, like as previously mentioned, I wanted to be a high school basketball coach. So I chose teaching as the career because I knew that I could easily be a high school coach because the day ends and it goes right into high school coaching. So even though I love teaching, 30 years, it was amazing. Great job, challenging, but loved it. But in 99, moved up to Massachusetts, and 2001, 2002, I've been trying to apply for different jobs. And then a couple college jobs opened up, and I started like, you know what? I might want to apply for those, because I really wanted to be a head coach, and didn't get anything because obviously when you're an assistant high school coach, no college is going to take a flyer on you at all. And then the head job for women's, because I was coaching men's soccer or boys soccer, the girls' job opened up in 2004. And that's when I started. But probably 2001, 2002 is when I had the first inklings, like, you know what, I'm actually interested in coaching college because I love the whole environment. It's why teaching is great, because you're with the kids all day long. And if it was just about winning and titles and accolades, then I'd probably just try and find the highest club level team possible and coach that and just look to win everything. But to me, it's always about people first. And so that's why I love the high school environment, because could see them in my classroom, see them in the hallways. I could help them grow. And then, specifically, I like the Division III level because, like, right now I'm on campus with all my athletes, and I meet them for lunch in the dining hall. I'm in the weight room with them. I'm just walking around campus, seeing them at our cafe on campus, stuff like that. I'm in their lives. I'm helping them grow as people, and that to me means so much more. I had a friend, college coach, asked me, he said, "Hey, Kevin, would you rather go 20-0, win a national title as a college coach, and hate every minute of it because all your players hated each other, but you were perfect. You never lost a game. You won the national title. You had all the accolades, but no one liked each other? Or would you rather go 10-10 and have every one of your kids invite you to their wedding?" And I'll pick the wedding. because that means I impacted, 25, 26, 26 kids' lives forever, that they felt what I helped create and help them grow impacted them so much that they wanted to invite me to one of their greatest, events of their life. So yeah, it's always about people first. And so, I know I've kind of sidetracked where you go into the college part. So, I was a 21-year head varsity girls job. Probably halfway through it, I had applied to a couple head college jobs across the United States. Was a finalist for a couple of them, but it just never worked out. So it was almost like, to me, personally, my own beliefs, it was basically God saying, "You're not ready for this yet. You need some development." And I did. I look back now, it's like I learned, how to train leaders. I have a leadership program I developed in high school, and now I bring it to the college. I had to learn recruiting. There's so much more I had to learn in those last, say, 10 years. And then as soon as I hit 30 years, my son goes, "Hey, Dad, the women's job just opened up at the college that he attends, and he plays in the men's team there." He said, "I know you always wanted to be a college coach. Why don't you apply?" And so I did. And kind of, I guess through a lot of prayer and circumstances, it worked out. And that's how it kind of came to be.
Dude, that's so cool. Sometimes they fall into your hands, right? like that one did. I loved my time at college. So I loved that you talked about would you rather go to people's marriages than a winning season? I went to Grayson University, which was in Iowa. It's a smaller NAIA school. And the biggest thing I loved about there, you talked about the friendships. We were a decent program, but compared to other programs, you could tell that there was a little bit of a gap. But the biggest thing for me, and you kind of alluded to it already, was the culture part of that college atmosphere, especially when you're quote unquote maybe a smaller school. That stuff is much more important. What does that look like for you? What kind of things do you do in the college setting to help with culture? Because for me, NAIA, when I went there, had a lot less rules on international players. So our whole roster was pretty much international. And the culture part of that is bringing all those different coaches to one place in Iowa was just so tough, because we're all from, we've got people from Venezuela and Colombia and Spain and England, Italy, and everything like that was just all together. But it worked, and it was awesome. And our coach, Guillermo Sanchez, was just amazing at dealing with that and helping that culture. What's some of the things that you do to help with the culture of your team, like bringing everyone together? Because I think that's super important.
I would say culture hit me as such a key, important, foundation or building block of any program. Kids on it who just, they bought into team first. Kids that didn't play and they're on the bench and they're screaming and they're fighting for their teammates. I'm like, okay, you know what? We went to our first undefeated season as soon as everyone bought into everything. So, I got to do more with this culture thing, because attitude and how people view that family, that culture impacted their success versus just being cutthroat and trying to win, stuff like that. And then in 2023, my high school team went to the first state finals ever. We've been getting close, quarters, semis, and then we finally get to the finals. And at the end of the season, we end up losing at 1-0. But one of my players in our end of the season evaluation goes, I said, "What are some key things you'll learn this year?" And this was a freshman who's, just going out to play in college right now, and she's broke every scoring record in our school history. It was fantastic. And as a freshman, she said, "I realized that it's not the team who has the best players who are the most successful. It's the ones who have really good players, but have kids who buy into that culture and they're like your sisters." And she went and explained, in the semifinals, it's 0-0 with 10 minutes left. And she said, "I played every minute of every game the whole year. I had nothing left in my body." And I felt like not I was going to give up, and I felt like I was struggling. And then all of a sudden I hear in my side of the voice, some kids on the bench who they were seniors who really didn't play much. And they're encouraging me they didn't sit down. They stood the whole game. And all of a sudden I got this feeling of they're my sisters and they're behind me and they have my back and they're not going to let me fail. And I got this jolt of energy, and she was able to finish the game. And she didn't score the winning goal, but she all of a sudden took so much pressure off everybody else. And we ended up getting a winning goal on a corner kick in that semifinals. And she goes, that sold me on what you're preaching about culture. And it's not always about the best players. And so I've taken it into college, and I'm rebuilding a program. When the coach left, colleges, players leave, kids transfer out because the coach is not there. Recruits don't come in. So we're kind of rebuilding it. It already had a great culture. And I was blessed to have kids who just were sold in and bought in to everything, whether they played or not. They're like, no, this is my sister. And like you said, your school had a ton of internationals. So do we. We're a small Division III Christian school that serves a lot of, pastor kids, missionary kids from all over the world. I have girls from Canada, China, Dominican Republic, Africa, Holland, all across America. And they come in and it's really cool how they just buy into being together, and the girls fight for it. And so we do a lot with, some of it's our leadership program, and we teach everybody, not just captains. Every single kid gets involved in this leadership curriculum. And we spend at least 30, 40 minutes once a week reading through our curriculum and answering questions and giving them scenarios. We do a lot of team building stuff. The first Saturday, end of Trats last year, I brought in improv. And, obviously being a Christian university, I took stories from the Bible and said, okay, improv this. And I gave them kind of a tweak on a story, like, you're Noah and you have to, the animals are auditioning for a place on the ark. Go. And I don't think we finished any of the improvs because we're all rolling around, just dying in laughter with each other, fumbling through it. And it's just stuff like that, as much as we can. We have movie nights. Anything where the kids have to be together and they build those relationships, and we kind of guard that with everything we possibly can do. Because I know that when there are times we had 11 players for a game because of injuries, and there's no subs, and here's the injured players just helping the kids to not even a game to make sure they can get through it, and it really strengthened those relationships because they were there for each other.
College is such a fun time, especially for like these young kids, and like you said, they probably made memories there with you that they've never made before, just purely out of just the improv and the stuff that you've done. That's super, super cool. So you're a little bit different, and anyone we've had on, because you're the first college coach we've kind of talked to. So I would love to pick your brain about a few things, because everything I get asked by my players or by some other people, and even in our coaching courses, is like, hey, I want to prepare kids for the next level. I want to prepare kids for college. And I know every coach is different and they look for different things, but what are some things specifically that you look for in a player that stands out to you, and someone like, hey, I want at my university, I want them playing on my team? What's something specific that stands out to you?
It's obviously it's going to be very different for me because of our institution being a Christian university. We, you have to have a face to come in. It's not one of those like, oh, I don't mind going and I don't believe, or like, no, that is one of the application questions, and you have to actually give evidence that you have a faith. So that, for us, that has to be number one. And then, of course, we look for the typical, so it's hard for me to go to a showcase and look at players and go, yeah, I like number 22, but hey, does she even want to go to Christian school? Does she even have, faith and stuff like that? So that makes it hard for me. So I do a lot of, when kids reach out, I'll email and say, before I come and look at you, can you answer these questions? Can we have a little email conversation? And then, can you send me some and then I'll look for video and stuff like that. Do a lot of, calling coaches. I look at social media, and they say, you could lose your college scholarship on social media. It is true. We coaches, we do look at stuff like that. So what you're posting does matter. And so we're just looking to fit a profile for, a kid who could come in and fit the culture. we'll go and watch you play. How do you act during warmups? How do you act when you lose? And I love to text a kid after a high school game, or club game, and say, "Hey, I already know the answer, but how'd the game go?" And they'll say, "Yeah, we had a tough game." Well, tell me about it. And if they're constantly the coach did this, and like, okay, those things go in my head. Like, is this person really a good fit? And I know sometimes you just have to vent. But then the next conversation, do they do it again? Do they do it again? And so we're looking for those kids who really take ownership, take responsibility, and because it's a lot to play in college. From your experience, it's not, rec. It is, the sub rules. Once you're out for the half, and coaches in college, if they go 0-20, they may not have a job after a year or two. So some people say like coaches pick favorites. The reality is, and I didn't make this up. I actually heard this one, so I'm passing on something that someone told me. It's like coaches do pick favorites, the favorites that they believe will keep their job. So if I pick, somebody's a favorite, it's not going to hit my job, then I don't know what that means as a favorite. So, yeah, we're looking for the whole package. What are you going to do? Do you that are majors? Are you going to involve in campus life? Are you I've had conversation with recruits. They're just here for soccer. I'm like, I don't know if you're a fit for us, because we're more than just soccer. We do outreach. We do tons of stuff, and you have to be willing to be part of all that. So yeah, there's a lot that goes into it.
So what about the collegiate player that you have in your team now? What is the difference between them and this, quote, a regular player? The reason I ask this question is because we spoke to Tyler last week, Tyler Weston. He coached a USL team that won USL, UPSL, I think, maybe. Sorry, I might have mispronounced that. And he had a player on his team that's about to participate in the World Cup with Ivory Coast. Mm-hmm. And he was telling me the difference between him and everyone else, where he would like wake up in the morning and he would already be stretching and eating properly and doing stuff where coaches weren't watching. What are some things that you notice from maybe a collegiate athlete that they do differently to then maybe a regular everyday soccer player at home?
I'll take it even further. I'll say it's the same for high school, college, pro, the pathway to that. The successful player versus the not, I'm gonna say not successful, because you could be on a winning team, you could be good, but the ones who are going to be the high achievers are the ones who do, just like that coach you were talking about. They get up early in the morning when no one's looking. I again, taking over this program, I was super excited. We lost with a minute left in double overtime in the playoffs this year, and on a sudden was it sudden death goal? It's not name called sudden death anymore. Sudden victory goal. And within a week, I walk in the campus and I told the girls, take 2 weeks off, let your bodies, let your minds recover. Then we got our lifting program. Within a week, they're already in there. And I didn't even tell them to. So things like that, they stick out. Like I look at a player, one of my incoming recruits this year, this coming fall, she just texted me, like, Coach, you gave me the plan. I've been working with this personal trainer for a couple of years. I have my own. Do I need to use yours? Here's what I have. And to me, as long as they are ready on the first day of training camp, I don't care what plan they use. They don't have to use mine. I'm not the end all be all. If they have something that works for them and gets them ready to compete and make an impact, I'm fine with that. And I tell them all that. So look, she's already been doing it. She's got 3 or 4 days a week. She's with this trainer, or lifting, and then her ball skill stuff and playing. Those who are willing to put in that time and effort. So that's what we're really looking for. And do you put in that extra time and effort? Because those are the ones that are going to separate themselves. Because you can still be a really good player in college or even pro, but you're not going to reach your potential or even get close to passing it unless you are willing to put in that effort. So, we're always looking for players to do that.
Yeah. I want to not switch gears, but just maybe talk about something at the younger ages, because a lot of coaches that I have on my courses always ask, how can I get my players to that point? How can I help them reach the point where they're going to do stuff on their own? where they're gonna, focus on their nutrition. They're gonna get maybe these extra trainers that will help them. And we had a great conversation with Josh. We had an episode where we talked about trainers and what that looks like, good and bad. Would you have any advice to maybe a younger coach that might be in this situation where they want to prepare these kids for college? And we're talking about younger age, which is kind of scary because we're talking about an 8 or 9-year-old kid. We shouldn't be talking about the college, but if a kid at that point really has the ambition and to just want to play soccer, that's probably going to be their end thing. What can a youth coach do to instill some of those things, those qualities that you see, to help these younger players? Because like I said, a lot of coaches I have asked me like, well, how do I help this kid? What would be your advice?
Best advice I can give anybody is create an environment where the kids want to be there. If they love what they're experiencing, they want to come to practice, you have them and they'll do whatever you want. If you tell them what to do, kids, I got to remember myself and my players, when I tell, hey, you have to do this, most of them will probably do it, but they'll do it because they're afraid of what you're going to do. But if I say, hey, you know what, do you love what you're doing? And they're like, yeah, I want to get better. Great. What would you like to know? What would you like to, and then all of a sudden they take ownership of it. So if you can create an environment where they want to be there, they're choosing it, they're in hook, line, sinker 100%. Once you have that, now you open the book and say, okay, would you like to know how you can get better? And if they say yes, here it is. But if you tell them you have to do this, you have to, be at a personal trainer twice a week. You have to, work on your foot skills. And we know, like, if you want to get good, you have to put in the time and effort. But until they want to, they're not going to be bought into it. And so I think, a lot of the kids, like, internationally, why are they good? Because they played street soccer. No coach told me how to go out in the, till, daylight ended and playing, in bare feet on the streets of whatever country they're in. They just played because they loved it and they loved the competition. They loved the kids they played with. Sometimes they just loved beating the kids they played with because they were annoying, whatever it may be. But so the biggest thing is, like, don't make it professional as a young coach, as a young team. Make it so they love being there. Do something that creates that environment they want to come back. And they're telling their parents, I can't wait for practice. Can you get me there early? And then do you have something going on where, like, in the coach ed course, we're like, when they come in early, do we have the activities set up that they want to be there? If we set up, boring activities, like, oh, that's what's coming, they're going to want to get there right when practice starts. But if there's something fun that's, 15, 20 minutes ahead of time, they'll be there. Then all of a sudden now they're 25 minutes early. Then, of course, now we got to get there half hour early and set up. But, it's that kind of like that nice, it's not a downward spiral, it's an upward spiral where it's self-fulfilling. They want to do it. It causes you to do more. They want to do more, and just keeps like a good avalanche.
Yeah,
so
I was going to ask.
Make them love it.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you. You answered the question, but I was going to ask, how do you teach that in your courses? Because moving into the coach education stuff, like I said, we've done the course together. It was a lot of fun. What's one of the challenges that you face in teaching your courses that maybe we didn't talk about in the educator course? Because there was obviously some things that we haven't experienced on that course that we did together, and then you go thrown into real life. I remember one, I'll just talk about mine real quick, is I don't know if I brought this up when we talked, but I taught my tester course, or whatever it was, the one you had to do, to a bunch of coaches at a club. It was a specific club one. Instead of coaches just registering, it was at a club. That the club wanted the course done to get all the new grassroots coaches in. Anyway, so we're sitting there and I'm explaining play, practice, play. And I remember this is the first time I've explained it to a group of people. And then at the end of it, I felt like I did such a great job. And I asked the question at the end, any questions to any of you guys? And I had a guy stand up and he was like, this is stupid. This is ridiculous. They're not getting any technical ability. I don't understand why we're trying to get forced to do this. What's the whole point behind this? And I just remember, like, I was never taught this. I was never taught how to react to this situation. And then your instincts kick in, right? You kick in, you're like, this is why we're doing it. We want to make it game-like, want the kids to enjoy the environment, want them to come back, everything that comes there. What's maybe one thing that you've experienced in those courses that is super important, but maybe something that you weren't prepared for, that is actual real life situation?
That's a good question. probably just like those kind of comments and questions. As a teacher, I always knew kids will ask me questions that I'm not ready for. So after many years, you kind of know what kind of questions are going to be asked. So it was just getting up to speed on what are these responses, questions, attitudes that that your student coaches are coming in with, so that you are prepared. You're never going to have all of them down, but if you have the general gist, you can really kind of ad lib through it and make connections and dots. And I had, that was one I kind of knew, like the coach asked you that question, like I knew that was going to be asked. And so one of my main responses to that one was, you're right, this is not the end all be all. Play, practice, play is not the only possible methodology, but maybe there's something in this that you can use and adapt to what you're doing. Do I use play, practice, play? Sometimes, yeah. Even in my college, I'll use it play, practice, play. Is it every time? No. Is it most of the time? No. Did I use it in my youth? Sometimes, yeah. I thought it was great. And then I adapted some of my other ones to involve some of those things. So how do we, at least, get our student coach to have an open mind to say, what's one thing that you can learn? When I did my, test session, and the guy who was doing the lead was my sponsor. He asked this question at the end. He brought all the players in, and he brought the student coaches in, and he asked the players, the teams that we had coming in, he goes, what was the topic? And every kid had a different answer. And so he didn't say right or wrong. He didn't make any of the kids, any of the coaches, especially the ones who were actually running the session, who took I'll do play one, I'll do play two, play three, stuff like that. He didn't make them feel bad at all. He just asked them a question. Great job, guys. Thanks for coming. There's a t-shirt over there. Go get some water, and have a great rest of your summer, because it was a June when I did mine. Kids went off, and he turned all to the group and said, so I want you to ask that question after every one of your sessions, even your own coaching sessions. Don't tell them the topic ahead of time. See if they can figure it out. If they can figure it out, then you got your idea down and they learned it. I'm like, wow, what an amazing little trick to figure that out. So, and I do that with like a lot of teams, but that's something I guess I wasn't ready to use that tool to see if the kids, the student coaches that I was mentoring and training, get out of what I'm doing. So I started asking them, hey, what do you think my session was about? What do you think that this discussion was about, to see if I could self-assess myself.
That's so cool. Oh my goodness. I think I've learned more from teaching these courses than I have coaching my own sessions.
Agreed. Agreed.
There's something that's new comes from every single thing. And no two people are the same. So my next question for you is why, and I'm preaching to the choir here, we're both teachers. Why is education important for coaches? Because there's a lot of people that I have people walk into the courses sometimes and I'm like, I don't need to know this. I already know this. Why are we doing this again? Like why are we going over this? Why do you think that these courses specifically, but why do you think education is so important to coaches? What do you think?
It's goes my earpiece. It's just like in rest of life, right? When you stop learning, you're dead. So find something that in each of these courses that can just make you a little better. Maybe it's an experience. Maybe it's like that one question that my mentor asked the whole group. Wow, that was a gold nugget for me. That was the best thing that happened that entire time. Maybe it's for you to try something, get out of your comfort zone. So I just I'll always preface when I'm starting these courses is like, this is a course, all right? It's an opportunity to try something, to find something new, to try and fail. Who cares? You're not going to lose your coaching career because of whatever happens in this course. And we're also here to help you through it. So if you try and you're taser experience or whatever you put in, or you try to, you leave, play 2 and it doesn't work out. That's okay. We're going to debrief it and figure out, okay, what happened? Because guess what? You're going to have a practice session sometime in your coaching career or it doesn't work, and you're going to what did I do wrong? So, how can we learn how to reflect? And maybe you realize that, hey, play practice play is not for your team at this point of view, or maybe, whatever. How do you learn how to self-reflect? And so I'll try and always make it more of a, an environment where they're trying to think and learn rather than just being about play, practice, player, or being about the, 5 elements of coaching. Those are just tools to help us really think about our craft. And I try and keep it that way. And I've found a lot more success for people, and people are a lot more open for it. And they're like, okay, so you're not here to tell me I'm wrong? No, I'm not. I'm here to help you figure out how you want to grow as a coach and support you in whatever way I possibly can.
I love that. I think a lot of the courses, especially the word course is someone that you think about. You take it in school, you take it as a coach. You're looking at this person being he knows all the answers, or that instructor knows all the answers. And I think as soon as you bring them back down to earth and be we're all here together still learning. I'm still going to learn from you. You're going to learn from me. We're going to help kind of shape and mold our coaching philosophy. I always ask that question. The first question I always ask is what's your coaching philosophy? And then everyone's I'm yeah, exactly. Yeah. You should not know at this point. You should be starting to mold it. You should starting to pick things that work for you. You're going to hear things today that you're going to love, and you're going to hear things today that you're going to hate. Can we start helping you? But I wanted to pick on one word that you mentioned because I think it's huge, and I wish that we talked about it a lot more. And it was mentorship. I really am someone who really believes in that. Everyone should have a mentor of some sort. You've mentioned those already. What does that look like for a new coach? What do maybe you tell the grassroots coaches in your courses, or what does that look like for a coach, and the specifics behind the reason why having a mentor is so important?
I think a lot of people think that mentorship is, hey, I'm underneath you. And that's where they don't, and I think people take that and they get that hint or the idea and they don't like it because it's oh, that means I have to put myself underneath someone. And in essence, you are, but you and I could be mentors to each other. But I'm going to humble myself at some point and say, hey, Mitchell, I'm struggling with this. Can you help me through this? Can you let me talk it out, and then let me know what you think. And so if you reframe mentorship as it's a relationship where you're going to be working together and kind of going through the journey of coaching, going through life together and seeing how does it work, and being open. And I think trying to redefine what mentorship really is. And sometimes, oh my God, I love when I was, first married. I had some, older couples that my wife and I, kind of hung out with at our church. And, did we have an official, mentorship relationship? No, but we would talk to them and say, hey, what do you think about, we're having kids right now and, this is happening. And they were great because they'd ask us questions back rather than saying, well, if you do this, this, and this. That's not mentorship. That's instruction. It's not even instruction. It's just telling someone, dictating what you should do. Go read a book if you want that. Really, mentorship should be a relationship, and you should be open with it. So I talk to the courses and people. I talk to my players. I don't always use the word mentorship, but I say go find someone you can relate to and do the journey together, because there are days that are going to be really bad, and there are days that are going to be amazing. And you're going to want to commiserate on the bad days, and you're going to want to share the stuff that's happening when it's good. I mean, you just go win a title. Guess what? You're not going to go home and just do nothing. You want to, tell somebody about it. Or you just found this kid who's been struggling the whole time, and all of a sudden, he or she all of a sudden gets it in a game or practice. And you're so excited that it finally worked, and you see the growth, and wow, you don't want to keep that inside. You want to pass it on to the assistant coach or whatever. You're a friend. And so that's part of mentorship, is having that kind of small circle where you can just grow together.
The biggest thing that you said there is, for me, that really hit me, and I think this is just the moral of everything. That's why I wanted to talk to you. Is that you can't do this journey on your own. And like you said, you've influenced so many people that I don't think people realize that coaching is not in isolation. Like, a lot of people are scared to reach out to people and show the vulnerability. I always talk about this in ours, is that I always ask the coaches after a session or whatever it looks like. Most of the time on the grassroots courses, I'll invite club teams to come do them, and they're decent club teams. And so they'll make the session look really, really good. And so I'll always ask, does anyone ever run a session that's looked really bad? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, so have I. It's like, have you ever been vulnerable enough to be like, sorry, I got that wrong, to the kids? Or like, I need to do better, my bad. And some of them like, no, I don't want them to see me as, someone that gets things wrong. And I'm like, well, unfortunately, we all get things wrong. Just ask our wives; they'll tell us all straight away. But like, I think that part of knowing that you're not alone and that you can continually improve, unless you're on the top stage and you're under the eyes of, I'm thinking last night's Knicks versus freaking Spurs game last night.
Thursday.
I mean, that we're talking about that being perfect. That last minute by the Spurs was not perfect, right?
No.
But like, youth coaches and stuff like that, if that was a game of ours, right, and in a youth setting, like, what can we do to learn from that? What can we do to help, each other move forward? So I think that's the biggest message I've had here. I've got two more things to ask you. Number one, you kind of alluded to it already, and you've answered the question, but I'm going to go back to it. Is, like I said, this is aimed at newer coaches that are coming into the game that don't have much experience and are looking for some guidance. What is one bit of advice that you would give that new coach?
Avoid comparisonitis. Don't look at somebody else and say, I got to be like that person, or I'm not like that person, and what's wrong with me? We're all created different. To me, I tell the best dad jokes in the world. So, my teams know it. They all laugh at my dad jokes. They think they're the best thing in sliced bread. I'm sure if they ever watch this podcast, you might get a lot of comments otherwise. But be who you are, and don't try and change yourself, because you're not going to be happy. We all as coaches, we go on the internet, social media, we try, and some people use the AI. We go to coaching sessions. I got to run it just like Pep runs this drill. Well, Pep can run it that way because his behavior, his attitude, his philosophies, his demeanor, the players that he has make it work. How does that work for you? Well, maybe you got to change the dimensions of the activity. Maybe your players can't do this part of it. Maybe the timing is different for you. Maybe how you set it up, your style of play. So don't be cookie cutter. Be yourself and have fun, because coaching can be hard. There are days where like, oh my goodness, it's not working, and maybe days in a row that happens, or weeks in a row, and you might doubt yourself. But if you come back to coaching philosophy, why are you doing this? For me, it's always about the people. So when I get down, like I have a losing streak, if that happens, because it has happened in my life, in my coaching career, I've had plenty of them. I go back to, like, who am I here for? Is it me and the fame and the trophy? I mean, I have this, in college, my freshman year, we lost the national finals. Senior year, we lost in the Final Four. They were both heartbreaking losses. I had the trophies from both. I have in my office. And when the kids come in, we talk about, what's real important. I'll say, okay, you know what? Look at the trophy. What do you notice? And they're like, well, it's old. Okay. What else? Look deeper. And finally someone will go, it's really dusty, coach. Don't you clean them? And I'm like, no, why? What is cleaning going to do to the trophy besides make it shine? What has this trophy ever done for me? Has it ever gotten me a job? Has it ever improved my marriage? Has it ever improved this friend relationship? Has it ever gotten me more money to go buy groceries and do stuff like that? No, it sits on the mantle of the bookshelf, and it's all it does. It hasn't, made my IQ better or give me better ideas. It's a glorified dust receiver. It has memories. Yeah, I remember the teammates that go there, right? You remember your teammates, and that's because you remember the relationships. What's more important? Your people, the relationships. So as a coach, remind yourself why you're doing it. Be yourself, who you are, and remember your purpose. And so that's what I would tell all new coaches and young coaches and even old coaches. Why are you doing this? I've been doing this for my 31 years of coaching for high school and college. And I honestly, I want to coach till I'm, past 70, because I just love doing this. And, in basketball, I was assistant on a state title winning team, but never in soccer. I've been runner-ups year after year and here and this, and sometimes the far end of that's where, we haven't had many wins at all. So I've seen all of it. That stuff's not going to matter when I'm 75. I was asked this question one time, when you, after a bad loss and you walk in and home and you have, I had 2 sets of twins and they were young. Do your kids ever ask you how your game was? And I said, sometimes. And what's the next thing? Daddy, come play with me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Coaches Conversations, presented by the Coaching Index. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and share it with a coach, parent, or player who may benefit from it. For more coaching insights, resources, articles, and future conversations, follow us on Instagram at The Coaching Index. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep making an impact.